Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walkshow podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. I want to remind you up front, you can always follow me on Twitter at the Walkshow Pod, Instagram and Facebook at the Walkshow. And if you like the show, then I also invite you to please like, rate, subscribe, star, thumbs up, whatever the app you listen to lets you do. It just helps the show become more discoverable, gets us plugged into those algorithms. I do apologize, I'm a little under the weather this week, so if I sound low energy or anything, it's not because I'm not excited to be here. I just, my voice isn't working like it normally does. On today's show, we actually have Brett Lindley, who is the co-host of my other podcast that I do with Brett called Pick Up Your Sticks, which is a gaming podcast. Brett and I on Pick Up Your Sticks try and investigate or explore, maybe is a better word, why gaming matters. So we don't just do news and reviews of games. We look at games and try and understand both, personally and then sometimes on a larger perspective, whether that be culturally or societally, whatever you want to call it, how games matter and how they've had an impact. So if you like gaming and like the kind of long-form discussions that you find here on the Walkshow, then Pick Up Your Sticks is going to be right up your alley. You can find Pick Up Your Sticks everywhere that you can find the Walkshow as far as podcast platforms go. The reason I had Brett on today's show is, obviously over the last few months, I've been openly discussing quite a bit my own personal journey to self-development, had on various guests. Well, Brett has actually been a really key integral part of that as well. Brett is also kind of going through a lot of the same stuff as far as trying to find new ways to get more out of life and feel better about things. And he's really been a real anchor for me throughout this whole process. It's been a real pleasure to have him as a friend. I just wanted to bring him on and kind of have him talk about his side of that coin and just kind of see where the discussion goes. And we had a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. As always, today's music is by Misha Zarins. Thank you, as always, to Misha for the lovely music. And without further ado, let's jump on over to the episode with Brett. Welcome to the Walk Show, Brett Lindley. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, for sure. So obviously, we spend quite a bit of time together already since we do the Pick Up Your Sticks podcast, the video game podcast that we started 3 months ago now, something like that. I don't know, 2 months, 3 months, I don't know. It's been a while, folks. It's been a while. You're not on that train, you're missing it. But anyway, so, we talk a lot about games and play games together and all that stuff, but we're actually pretty good friends. And on the Walk Show, I've talked the last several months a lot about my own personal development and, the power of habits and routines and discipline. And I've had the life coaches on, things like that. And something that I hadn't really talked at all about, maybe a little bit, but not much, is actually your role in that specifically with me as well. You and I both kind of committed around the same time, or maybe committed is not even the right word, but whatever, came to a conclusion that we could get more out of our lives, could feel better than we did on a regular basis.
Right.
And so both started trying to develop new routines and new habits, and both kind of jumped into it. And I've shared this with you personally, but I wanted to say on the podcast as well. I mean, you've been a huge inspiration for me to keep going in all this. And it's funny, like today I'm sick, and I've been sick this week, and I'm a man, so it's like the end is near.
It's the worst.
I've been working on my will for the last several days. But anyway, you've been trying to cheer me up and joking around or whatever, and I'm normally the one that is that. Like, I'm the one that is always trying to be funny at inappropriate times, usually to no avail, right? Other than to irritate the person who's upset. But anyway, and you were like, well, but you're joking around and trying to cheer me up, and you were like, is it working? And I said, kind of. And what I meant by that was like yesterday I felt pretty terrible, just head cold stuff to be clear, but
Right.
And was talking to you and had just said that I was like, I can't go for a walk today or anything. Like, I just don't feel. And you were like, yeah, I think that's fine. You know, you can be sick. That's okay. And actually, as we were talking, I actually dressed up, put a coat on, and went for a walk, and did go for a walk.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Right. Or like
secret
today,
time.
Yeah. Well, you had to get off the phone somewhat abruptly.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, and then like today, we were chatting, and you were like, Are you gonna record a podcast? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not really feeling that great. But then just from just chatting with you, I had this like smaller burst of energy. And that has actually just been consistent throughout this whole process, whether it be about podcasting or going for a walk or whatever. There's just so much value in having someone else who's kind of in that same place in the journey with you,
right,
that you can relate to and talk to. This is probably just seems like I'm trying to flatter you now, and I'm not.
No, I appreciate it. It's going to come right back at you in a few minutes, so start prepping.
Okay.
I know that may make you uncomfortable. So I'm giving you a warning.
I'm a monster. Anyway. But no, man. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of to start off with saying that it's super cool, and it's cool because like I've got other friends who are really into personal development, but like one friend specifically who's been doing it for over a decade. And so it's not that he's not of value to talk to about it or something, but he's so much further ahead than where I am that sometimes it can be hard to relate to one another.
Or it's a little
subject.
Intimidating, or
you
just feel like you're on a different level. It
right.
can be difficult to sync.
Right. And then, or I have other friends who like, you know, don't care at all about that kind of stuff, which is fine. If they're happy, then they're happy. Great. And so then I can't talk to them about it because it feels weird, or it feels like I'm like trying to like brag or something. And
right. You don't want to be the guy talking about, you know, all you eat is kale salads to the guy that's eating a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Right.
We've all had that experience. We've all been in that realm of being like, I don't ever want to be like that guy. And then all of a sudden you start being like that guy and you're like, no.
Right. Yeah. Turn into an evangelist basically for whatever flavor of the month thing I'm doing. But yeah, so anyway, like I said, we just wanted to start off with that. But yeah, so I think both of us have developed workout routines. Mm-hmm. Both of us have developed like meditation routines. Mm-hmm. We're both reading, both doing affirmations, like a lot of that same stuff we're both on that track of. Just super cool and super. It's something that I couldn't have predicted. Like I wouldn't, and that's been true of so many things on this path, is like, I wouldn't, because like, for example, a lot of people will say they like to have a buddy to work out with.
Right.
I actually don't, because
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. When I work out, I want headphones in and I don't want to talk. I just want to do.
It's like having a workout. It's in the same vein. The way I see it is like, it's in the same vein as having somebody to help keep you accountable, pump you up, spot for you, you know, like help you know if you're trying to take too much or whatever. It's like a workout buddy, but for just like self-improvement. I kind of hate that term, but it's what it is in essence, in a lot of different ways. But I'm the same way. Like I'm working on it, but I'm incredibly self-conscious, especially when it comes to working out. Like I cannot work out in a gym because I have severe confidence issues, and it's always been something that I've struggled with in life, is, you know, kind of my own perception of my own self-image, and in a lot of different ways, but especially physically. I'm a pretty lanky guy, and not ever been a big, you know, weightlifter or anything like that. Especially not consistently. So I tend to, you know, the same. I want either headphones or the Walkshow podcast, I'm serious, or something on to listen to while I do my workout. And a lot of times it is the Walkshow. It's I listen to it a lot. I love this show. So, and because just like our general conversations are motivating, and your recent guests have been very motivating, whether they be about life coaching or music or anything else. I find something inspirational in most of the people that you have on. And I think that just because you're talking about, music or what art or whatever, doesn't mean that I can't apply that to some piece of that to what I'm doing. Like finding the inspiration in somebody that's willing to dissect a musical piece, or just find a new pet metaphor for something, or talk about a concert that they went to recently. Like I'm trying to take motivation from those things to be like, those are the types of things I want to talk about and enjoy and do. And so, but again, I would not want to work out buddy. I've actually, a long time ago, I lived in the house with a number of other guys, and we had some workout equipment and tried to get into a routine that lasted maybe like a week or two tops. And I wasn't against it then, because I was pretty comfortable with those individuals and we'd built a bond together, but we were young and drinking a lot. So,
Right.
that's not going to last long. But even like, wasn't last year, but maybe the year before, one of the two, I had started a workout routine about the same time of the year. It's been about around fall. I usually go into some kind of introspective quest. But it only lasted about 30 days because I got sick. And I mean, people around me, I think you had even motivated me at that time. A lot of people were like, hey, you can make it, you can keep going, and everything gets in the way. You stop. I got really bad, like flu for like 2 weeks, and then just everything fell apart. I didn't go back to doing it again. But this go round, I guess, has been not only the longest that I've ever done something like this, but also the most broad spectrum, because it's not just, I'm not just going like, I'm going to work out. I find something probably every week, if not more than once a week, to adjust about my routine. And you've been like, it's not, I joked around the other day about this, that it's not really like it's one-upsmanship, but it was a little, because I started with therapy, right? Like, and that's been something that I've gone back and forth with and struggled for a long time in finding a good therapist, and I eventually found one. And that was kind of my start on this, was like, well, if I'm paying to see a therapist, I need to do the work and use that as my accountability measuring stick. Is like, I'm not just going to go talk about my problems, even if it's a problem that we haven't talked about. I'm going to work on this other one because I know it's there, and
Right.
I'm using it kind of like a gym membership holds you accountable to going and working out. And so I kind of started there, and then I'd shared that with you, and you were going through and doing the morning routine, the reading, the journaling and writing and stuff. I wasn't doing those things. But then we also kind of started picking up on each other's habits. Like I was like, well, maybe I need to read more. That would be a good thing for me. Like this routine does sound good. This power of habit does sound good. And so, we don't do the same exact things. We don't do the same workout routine. I don't journal as much, or when I do, I have like writing prompts. My therapist is really cool about giving me a writing prompt to work on for the week or something, or two, or whatever. But it's just been like, you've just been as inspiring to me. Like I feel odd, like being like you saying that I inspire you, but at the same point in time, it's like you've been all of those things to me. Like I wasn't trying to hype man you and say you should get a life coach or go to therapy or do whatever. I was just being me and just kind of sharing my experiences, and you were doing the same thing. It really did happen that we didn't set out to be like life improvement buddies. It just so happened that we were both going through similar types of, events at the same time, and being able to share where we are, and both being on similar points, maybe in different tracks, but being able to say like, hey, I've been doing this reading routine for whatever, and I've been doing a workout routine or therapy, and going back and forth and sharing those experiences has been equally inspirational, because now I have somebody else that I can share in that the struggle with, like when it's bad, when I push through and it was really hard. You're the only person that I tell. Like it sucked today. I didn't want to do it, and I did it anyway. And not only did I do it, but I did better than I did yesterday.
Right.
And and then you're very genuine with your compliments. Like that's awesome. Like you don't go overboard and like but you do celebrate it, and you're like, hey, good job. And I try to do the same for you. Like, man, you went walking out in the crazy cold when it was like we had our 3 days of fall, and then super winter hit.
Yeah, it was like 20 yesterday when I went out.
Yeah.
was a good coat though.
And so it's like, that's awesome. And, you know, we also share in our successes and our failures where, you know, both of us have stumbled in various routines and things that we've been trying to work on. And we've also both done, I mean, we're doing completely different things in some areas, but can still see the benefits of one or the other and like how things have changed. And I think it's just, it's not a workout buddy, but it's more like a shared experience. And I think that it's awesome.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same benefit that people talk about for having a workout buddy.
Right.
And I should clarify, I have had workout buddies in the past that were cool. In fact, the good friend of mine who taught me how to lift weights, I mean, that was how he taught me, was we went and worked out together for several months. And honestly, I'm eternally grateful for that because it taught me how to lift weights. And I have a deep respect for, the forms and things of it, you know?
Right.
So, and I think he totally instilled that in me. So not to say that there's never value in workout buddy, but certainly now with being comfortable with being in a gym or something, like, yeah, I don't know. I would rather just headphone up and do it than constantly have the other person take their turn and talk between
Right.
sets and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I just want to do it.
Yeah,
But,
I want to get this over as soon as possible.
yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah, let's not delay this, please.
no.
But yeah, so you kind of touched on this lightly, but so, you know, in the last few weeks, I started going to see a counselor, a cognitive behavioral therapist, which has been really awesome because, you know, so I first came on the show and talked about this book, Discipline Equals Freedom. And that book is great. And I highly recommend it to anyone who has any doubt about their level of discipline, which is probably most people, but, it's a really excellent book. However, it's framed as this like eternal vigilance, right? Now it's written by a Navy SEAL, so it's also just the language is all war language. You know, like you never know when the enemy's going to attack, and just the word vigilance in itself is somewhat military-ish, you know. But anyway, like it's really good. But to be perfectly honest, it was kind of intimidating because it's like I don't know if I can live my whole life like constantly looking out the window to see if the enemy's there yet. You know what I mean? Metaphorical window, metaphorical enemy. But whatever. I bought into it. I did it, and then I read The Power of Habit. Well, that felt like the graduation of Discipline Equals Freedom because it's what I've actually discovered is that initially discipline is required to get started in things, but then once you've established habits, then the habits actually kind of reduce the need for the discipline. Like it still comes up. It's not that every day is perfect, but there are a lot
easier to tackle though.
Yeah, there's way more days where I don't have to be vigilant and still do the routines than not.
I've taken a lot from, you know, just our conversations and you reading that. I've yet to read it, but I have taken a lot from it where every other time that I've tried to get on this kind of pathway, I've tried to stick to like timelines and like I'm going to work out at 11:30 on my lunch break every day or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this time I'm tying things to other routines. And that lets me snowball things. And like you said, it takes some of that determination and drive out of having to do it. I still, you know, I'm getting ready. So part of my routine is I take the dog for a walk every day. And when I get back, I just consider that my cardio and I move straight into a workout routine, right? And I may be lacing the dog up and lacing my shoes up to go for a walk and thinking, oh man, it's going to suck I got to work out after this, you know? But those thoughts are easier to calm down than if I was just like cold turkey, oh, it's 11 o'clock, I have to work out.
Right.
Because it's easier to go, well, I've already done step one, now I'm going to do step two. And being able to chain it, and now I don't care when I take the dog for a walk. If I've taken an early lunch at 10 or a late lunch at noon, it doesn't matter. I am now, it just takes away that need for a timeline and for me to be rigorous or like punish myself or feel bad that it's like, oh, it's 11:35, I'm late. Maybe I'll just skip today, you know, like it takes all that out. And I've been applying that to a lot of routines, actually, like a lot of self-care things that I may have neglected before. I just roll into, if I can find another routine to attach it to, like when I take my retainers out at night, that's when I brush my teeth, and instead of when I go to bed or whatever, like, and just attach it to that wherever I'm close, if it's location. And when I get up in the morning before I put them in, so tying it to something else instead of like, oh, well, maybe I'll do it after I have coffee. Cause no, it's just, because that's not a set space, and I'm going to be finishing the coffee like in the office or outside or in the garage or whatever. Whereas I'm going to be in the bathroom putting my retainers in the case. So
right, messing with your mouth, literally.
Right. And so, so I can snowball that because I'm already there. In the same way that if I jog the last couple of blocks home or power walk or take a longer lap with the dog, I'm already energized. I'm huffing and puffing a little. I'm ready to do a workout routine. Whereas if I'm just sitting around, it takes a lot more of that forceful determination to get into that. So I have learned that like chaining routines makes it so much easier to establish a new routine, where like before it could take me a month to develop a new routine, I can do it in a week now or a couple of days. And it's just, it's so incredibly, it makes it so much easier. And I'm actually starting to enjoy how easy that is. And like, well, if I want to change anything about myself, all I have to find is something similar that I'm already doing, because I'm already taking my retainers out every day, like, so can I chain something to that? Can I chain something to these things that I'm doing? And that way it makes the habit, there's one habit that's already there. Can I chain a new habit to it? And that way it already has some of that momentum going that I can get into and just kind of use that momentum to drive that ball a little bit, in a different direction. It's been super helpful.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's an insight that I've had before, but that's a really good insight. I hadn't really considered trying to find adjacent habits to tie new things to, but that makes a lot of sense. And maybe I've done that without thinking about it. I'd have to sit and think. I don't know, but no, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, it's really powerful. And what I would say, and I know I've harped on this a lot, but I think I don't know if I've told this story before or not. Whatever. You people are just gonna have to hear the same stories again. This is who I am. I'm the reteller. All right. So when I was like 17, I worked in the hospital cafeteria, and in the summer, this one particular summer between school years, my job the whole summer was me and this other girl who was my same age that worked there too. We were assigned to go to the back of the kitchen area, if you will, of the cafeteria, and cut fruit, like watermelon, cantaloupe, apples, whatever, cut fruit up and package it. And then those packages went to the cafeteria for people to buy already cut up fruit. Right. Well, that's like the easiest job that I've ever had. Like, it was insanely easy. We literally just cut fruit. There was no quota, because it's not like a restaurant, it's just a hospital cafeteria. So it's not like, no one cares.
Yeah.
And the girl that I worked with was great, and we had a lot of fun and would play around and joke all the time. So it was just a really cake easy high school summer job. So I'm at the mall, and I run into some friends from school that I hadn't seen in a while, and they asked what I'm up to, and so I'm telling them about this job, and I'm telling them how easy it is and how I can't believe that this is the work I get to do or whatever, because it's so easy and silly. Well, right after that, this Marine recruiter walks up and is like, hey, that's great that you've got a really easy job. Have you ever thought about joining the Marines? And I just laughed, because anyone that knows me would know that I am not Marine material. And then I said, no, I'm not considering that. And he said, well, if you always take the easy road, then at some point in life, you're going to face something that's really hard. And if you've only done the easy way, how are you going to know how to do the hard thing? And me, being the smart ass 17-year-old or whatever that I was, said, well, you just said that I always find the easy way, so I'll still just find the easy way. And that'll be that. Right. He was not impressed. I was not impressed. We parted ways, and that was the end of that. Well, in the last few years, not since I turned 30 specifically, I actually thought it was funny when I turned 30, but whatever. In the last few years, I've remembered that conversation, and I'm like, what if this dude's right? Like, what if I did pick the wrong way and I don't know how to actually overcome things? because for such a long time, I've been looking for this epiphany. And so, like, obviously I had the episode where I talked with my sister about my dad passing. And I think I've talked about this separately in other episodes about perception. But when my dad passed, that was the single most traumatic thing that ever happened to me, right?
Right.
Well, I overcome that by understanding that I can shift how I understand that set of circumstances, which then changes how I can feel about that set of circumstances. And that's what I did, and that's how I overcame it, and that's how I dealt with it, and that's how I don't feel sad all the time anymore and can talk about it. However, I wasn't able to apply that same skill or whatever, I don't know what you would call it, but whatever. I wasn't able to apply that same set of principles to anything else in my life. Like, for example, weight loss, right? Like,
right.
Why can't I change my perception there and understand a new set of beliefs and then move forward? And it was because I was constantly searching for this epiphany. And I used to always say, like if you ask an Olympic runner, which is an extreme example, but if you ask an Olympic runner to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and go for a run, there's no asking. They just already do
doing it.
Right. But if you ask me to get out of bed at 5 a.m. to go for a run, I say no. So, but I would otherwise say, yes, I think that would be a good thing for me to do. So how do I align my will with stated goals?
Right.
Is, for lack of a better way to say that. And I always have been searching for these epiphanies and constantly thinking about it and talking about it. And just for over a decade, I've been doing this.
Right.
And have never found an answer. And it just felt very confused. Well, then we stumble into these last few months with discipline and habit and now cognitive behavioral therapy, which, to finish that thought briefly, cognitive behavioral therapy is like the next step of the power of habit. Like, it's like the grown-up version of that, right? So it's just this escalating path from discipline to habits to now the CBT thing. Anyway, I now actually think that I have the answer for that Marine. And honestly, maybe it's what the Marine would have taught me anyway, had I went that way. Well, he wouldn't have, because I would have been in military prison for insubordination. But assuming that I could have avoided that somehow, the answer is habits. Yep. The answer, I fundamentally believe that the secret code, the secret key to whatever change any person wants to make is habits. And I don't, like, I was talking with another buddy about this, and he was like, well, you might say that, but if I think that I've had this epiphany or found some other way to that, then am I not right? If I think that that's how I got there? And I was like, yeah, I would say that you're not actually. I would say that you're not crazy or you're not wrong that you had an epiphany, but if you actually looked at what changed, I guarantee you your habits changed.
Right.
There's just no way. There's no way they don't. Like, I don't believe that there's a way.
Outside of the real edge case people that, like, get struck by lightning and become a concert pianist overnight, outside of the, like, 1 in a billion chances that those happen, it's mostly you get good at something through repetition.
Right. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
No, that's just, and that is habit. Like,
right.
If you change your outlook, if you start becoming a positive person, you don't just become a positive person overnight. You may start to, but it won't be until you do that over and over and over again that you then become that thing.
Well, so that's what I actually came to recently realize with how I dealt with the passing of my dad. Again, I thought it was this epiphany that I stumbled into, but that's not true. What actually happened was I got to a point where I was like, I can't go on like this. Like, I can't carry tragedy around with me every day. There has to be a different way. And so I would come home from work and I would literally just sit and think about it. And I didn't want to think about it. It was sad. It was hard. I didn't like it.
Right.
But I couldn't exist that way. So I just forced myself to think about it. And what I actually did was developed a habit of thinking about it in a different way until eventually I found a new way. You know what I mean? But
No,
I didn't just think
100%.
about it once and go, oh, I get it. So it still was a habit. There was still a habit change involved.
Yep.
That led to that new outcome. And yeah, I just fundamentally believe that that's the secret key now, and that's that. And that's not to diminish the work that goes into establishing new habits or routines. So not to say that it's easy, but it is easy in so much as that there actually isn't. You don't actually have to figure out something intellectually. You just have to start taking action,
Right.
And develop new
and like I mean, even how I even got started on a lot of this was I had the same thing where I had gotten sick and tired of thinking the same things over and over. And it really started with my posture. So I have terrible posture. I work in a home office. I play a lot of video games. I do not have the greatest office chair. And I have always kind of had bad posture. And I constantly think about it, like, oh, gee, my posture, my back hurts, whatever, you know. Like, two things that I always think about is like, I should probably work out more, and gee, my posture is terrible. I should fix that. But I didn't ever do anything. I just thought about it all the time, and I got to a point where I got sick of beating myself up. Like, I'm sick of always thinking, gee, I have bad posture. Gee, I'm never working out. And so what I did was to keep myself from I really what I was tired of. I was not tired of having bad posture. I was tired of thinking about having bad posture.
Right.
So that was the thing that I finally decided I need to stop thinking about this because it's just irritating. And I was like, there's only two ways to do that. Either I become completely okay with terrible posture, or I at least do something to try to fix it. And so I just made a sticky note that said posture question mark. And I stuck it to my monitor. And that made it a question. Then I could answer that question. One, it externalized the thought. So it got the thought out. It's on paper now. Yep. And two is it turned it into a question. A question that I was okay to say no to. If I'm watching YouTube with chips and salsa in my lap, that's no. I'm slouch timing, you know? Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to beat myself up about that, and I've already answered the question. The answer is no, and that is an okay answer. I don't think about it anymore. I'm like, oh gee, I shouldn't say no to this. I just don't, because there's plenty of other times where I'm like, I look and I see it and I'm like, I just kind of self-check in for a half a second, and I'm like, oh yep, nope, I'm definitely sitting on my foot. I'm going to shift over and maybe straighten my back, throw my shoulders back, whatever. It takes like a half a second to fix, right? And then I don't think about it. I don't think about it the rest of the day. Whereas before, I would think about it maybe 20 times. Like, even in places where I'm not, like, in a posture scenario. Like, in the kitchen cooking dinner, I'm like, gee, my posture's terrible. Like, this is probably why I'm hunching or why I'm sore or whatever. And just these cyclical negative thoughts. And the same thing with working out. Working out started with, can I do one pull-up? I was in a pretty dark, depressive state. And I knew that I could do more than that, but it wasn't. I've done the whole like just spend 10 minutes a day on X or Y or whatever. You know, we've gone through that a number of times, and I was like, I want to find the barest minimum thing that I can do that I can check the box and not think about. And it literally was, can I take 8 seconds and do one pull up? And if I do no more, fine, I'm done. And if I say no, I'm too depressed, or no, I'm sick or whatever, that's also okay. It just is the only thing that I was not looking to get better physically. I was looking to remove that thought and the constant like beating myself up about stuff.
Yeah.
But then that stick, and it was such a small thing that I would be embarrassed for saying no. Because like even 10 minutes can be too long sometimes. So I was like, what's the like 5-second thing that I literally can't say no to, right? Without just feeling like garbage. Unless I already feel like garbage, then if it's that bad, then saying no is okay, right? Because I don't want to pressure myself. So it started there, and it turned from 1 to 2 to 3. It was still, the limit was 1. Some days I go back to 1, you know?
Right.
And then it was adding more physical exercises and more and more and more. And now I have And that was all before I started walking the dog. It wasn't until I realized, like, oh, well, if I'm walking the dog, I can do my one pull up after that. And then I'm done for the day, right? I don't have to
Right.
worry about it the rest of the day. And then that turned into, now I have a full hour long routine that I, take, that includes lunch. It includes a rest time and everything, all self-care, shower, workout routine, everything, affirmations and all of that at once. It's like, all of that started not because I wanted to be healthy, but because I didn't want to think about it anymore. And I guess
Yeah,
that's a surprising thing for me. It was like,
no, that was it for me too. It's that there's the Blind Melon song "Walk," which is not their most popular song. That's probably the Rain one, "No More Rain" or whatever.
mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, there's a line in that where he says, "I need to get to the mountaintop where I can see everything because this paranoia is getting really old." And paranoia is often associated with like external, but to me it was just like these constant thoughts of negatives. And that's the other thing that also though is solved for me through the habit of probably affirmations is probably the one that helps with this the most, but is getting out of that cycle of hating yourself all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about that a lot too, but it's the thing that you will fail before you begin if you can't get past, if you can't forgive yourself.
Right.
Like the truth is that people are complicated and nuanced and are, especially American culture and maybe everywhere, but people want things to be very binary and they want things to be boiled down to, yes, no, left, right, blue, red, whatever. And that's just not actually the way it goes. People are capable, an individual person is capable of doing something magnificent and beautiful and wonderful, and that same individual is still capable of doing something despicable and dark and horrible.
Right.
And now I would argue that there are lines where you could go too far and I'm not on your team anymore, but but whatever. But the point just being that like for me, like just because I make a bad decision with like a diet choice or something, a food choice, doesn't invalidate the rest of my character.
Right. That's something that I've worked on too.
In that trap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I no longer get depressed about, well, I only did half my workout routine. Instead, I'm like, I did half my workout routine while I was severely depressed. That's awesome. I will feel better about that, and I will use that to do something else. And one of the other things that you kind of touched on there was just how powerful affirmations are. And I always kind of wrote them, like I've known about them for a long time, but I always kind of wrote them off in some level, just because it was like, it wasn't until you had the podcast where you had said that, like, well, we lie to ourselves all the time. We can tell the truth and not believe it. And it was that really hit me. And I've taken that like a step further, because one of the things that happened is I chose some affirmations that were not always true, but that I wanted to believe in.
Yep.
And what I found myself doing is being self-embarrassed. It wasn't like beating up on myself. It wasn't like I was being like malicious to myself, like I have other self-destructive habits in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it was like an embarrassment. Like when I'm saying that I am strong, or I am, in good shape, and I eat right, or whatever, and I'm saying these things, instead of feeling bad about it, I would find how can I make that more true?
Right.
And so, like, if I'm saying I eat healthy foods, then I'm saying that every day, and every day I'm like, well, I just had pizza, and then maybe the next day is like, well, I don't want to be embarrassed by this anymore, so I'm gonna go eat healthy because it's just what I want to do anyway.
Right.
And so maybe I will have a healthy snack. Maybe I will choose the better, have a good side with dinner or something, whatever. And I've started using that, and I've started finding things to add to my affirmations or change that aren't true yet, but I want to be true, and I almost need that self-embarrassment to get there. Because, and I don't know, it's not that I'm trying to be mean to myself. It's more that I want to achieve that to where that is true. it's not that I want to like beat myself up and flog myself to do better things. It's that I want to become the person who says that and then believes it because it just is true.
Well, so the word you just said is the key. So the key to, you read that The Power of Habit book, for example, and it talks about the AA program at great length, and how the AA program doesn't actually align with most academic based therapy solutions or recovery solutions. However, in I want to say it was the early 2000s, academic institutions started doing more deep digging into the AA program. And actually what they discovered was that what the AA program builds into every step of it is a sense of belief that you have to believe. And ultimately, that is actually, now I'm contradicting myself because I just said habits were the root of it, but I, to back it up, to go even more granular, the most important critical step that has to be there before anything else is belief. But when you're in a bad or dark spot, it's impossible, or it can feel impossible to have those beliefs, right? Because, well, I am just a lazy slob. Like how can I believe that I'm not, right? And affirmations are the shortcut, the hack to changing your beliefs. And it's exactly the way that you just described. It's not by using them to project something out into the future, because if you say, I want to control my spending habits better,
right?
Well, what you're actually indirectly inferring is that you don't control your spending habits now.
Correct.
So even though you're not saying those words directly, you're actually just doing an affirmation where you're constantly just saying over and over, I'm not good enough yet. I'm not good enough yet. And that will get you nowhere because you already thought that.
Yeah.
So instead, when you use the affirmations to create the new reality that you want, the new set of beliefs that, maybe aren't true, but again, like you brought up that I'd mentioned before, the truth never got in my way before now. You know what I mean? So
so it can't be any worse than that.
Right. I'm already willing to tell myself things that aren't true. So why not tell myself something positive that's not true if I was going to do that anyway? And and the affirmations, and that's again where it ties back into habit, though, because it's not from doing the affirmations one time.
No. It's like day 3 or 5 where I keep saying the same thing and but I'm not doing the work for this. And I want to, the thing is I want to feel, because I'm a very, truth and true statements is something that I hold as a core belief. I am very tied to the truth. And so if I'm, especially myself, if I'm telling a lie, I feel terrible. And it's not that I feel terrible for telling the lie in this situation. It's just I want to achieve a state of being where that statement is wholly true.
Right.
And so instead of being mad at myself for it being a lie, I'm just yeah, but I'm in total control of all of this. I created the affirmation. I can take all the steps to do it. I set myself, it's a goal that is attainable. And the measure of success of that goal is how much truth do I feel when I say those words. And I force myself to say them every day. And certain ones I feel more true about than others. And some days I feel true about all of them. But it empowers me after that, because if I feel like I said all these things and they're just all true now,
right,
I feel amazing. I'm like, holy crap, these things weren't true 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And now they are. But it wasn't like I said them and they all just magically happened. It took the realization that's yeah, but that's not true today. Yeah, but that's not totally true today. Yeah, but you could take it a step further. You could improve, your self-care routine or your strength and conditioning routine or whatever. You've not added any reps for a few days. You could probably add another rep, and maybe I don't do it that day, but the next day I'll be thinking about that.
Right.
And I will go the extra step. I will take the additional measure. And some days I do have pizza and cookies, and that's fine. It's balanced, because I think overall I'm still better off than I was when I wasn't doing any of this.
Right.
So one day of pizza and cookies, like you said, doesn't invalidate a week of eating healthy.
Right.
So
right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and Yeah, it's so important to not villainize yourself. I mean, that's, I've talked a lot about Brochure Man.
Yep.
And the whole idea, the whole reason I had to come up with that is just because I had to find a way to rationalize this part of myself that makes bad decisions very quickly
Right.
without any real consideration. Just like, bam, we're making bad decisions, let's do it. And that part of me used to shame the other part of me out of action, right? And it was like, well, we're never going to get anywhere if I do that. I will be stuck in this same spot forever. And so then it used to be that I would get really mad at that part of myself that makes bad decisions and be,
Right.
I mean, as you know, I can be incredibly brutal with myself.
Yep.
And I had to just find a way to stop doing that. And Brochure Man is kind of that, because it kind of puts a little humor
Yeah,
to
he's
it.
not evil.
Lighter, right? It's also all just me still, which is kind of crazy. But
well, and so I'll share something with you that I haven't shared openly with you before, which is one of the things that I've been taking to help control that, because I feel that, again, villainizing myself is just another form of self-depreciation, of self-hatred, and trying to be an enemy of yesterday's me or whatever, and making it a war, making it a struggle, is not healthy, because then I'm just attacking myself.
right.
So I've started trying to have compassion for that side of me. And when it comes, and like you said, when Brochure Man shows up the door and is offering me some terrible thing, it's doing it out with my voice, right? Like, it is me.
Right.
So I've started taking the time to, like, mentally focus myself at it and talk to it as if it were a separate entity and tell it, please stop using my voice. That's to say, what you're saying is not me anymore. And you're using something that doesn't belong to you anymore. You're using my consciousness, which it is still me, right?
Right. I get you. Yeah.
But it's compassionate. I don't tell it stop it. I don't yell at it. I'm not angry at it. I'm compassionate, and I love it. And I'm like, I appreciate that you want these things, but we can live without them, and we can do better. And I want you to become better, because I want to sell Brochure Man my brochure, which is becoming the better version of me.
Yeah, can you show up with some positive brochures, Brochure
Right.
Man?
Like, hey, I appreciate this one, but please stop giving it to me. And I'm engaging that thought process as if it was, which, I'm not trying to be like split personalities or anything, but I'm trying to be compassionate to it and to show it the love, and just like I would like a kid. Like, I'm going to treat it like a little kid that wants a cookie, and I want another cookie. Well, I know you want another cookie, and I love you, but we're not going to have another cookie right now. And please stop pretending to be me. You're pretending to be me, and you're not me. If you want to be me, you've got to get on my level and help with the good brochures, because that's what we're trying to sell.
Wow, that's great. So I had a few weeks ago, I had on my podcast Ashley Thomas, who's the Queen Bee on the Wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that episode.
I did too, and I really enjoyed talking to Ashley. Well, after that, I talked to her again the following week, and I actually decided to sign up with her as my life coach.
Yeah.
So I'm actually working with her as well. And I think what you just said might have skipped ahead a few steps of where she is trying to lead me. Because she thinks the idea of Brochure Man is amusing and, likes it or whatever. And so she talks to me about that, and she was like, I think we need to try. She's like, I think ultimately what we're going to try and do is find a way to recruit Brochure Man over to our side, which is literally what you just described doing.
I'm just learning by osmosis through you.
Right. She hadn't actually explained it in the way that you had. She kind of like planted the seed and then kind of like let it go, and we talked about other stuff. But that has to be where she was going with it ultimately, is what you just described. And yeah, that's fascinating.
And it's been difficult.
I'm off put because I'm trying to do this damn show, and now it's actually really profound.
I don't mean for it to be.
I know.
but I mean, it has been. I recognize that a piece of me would yell at that,
Yeah.
Just in my own mind all the time and get mad. And that would reflect physically. I would get depressed, or I'd be stressed, or I'd get mad at something else, or I'd redirect anger. And it's like, I'm redirecting the anger that I have about myself into the external world. And that's definitely not what I want to be, you know.
Right.
And so, and I'm not perfect at it yet. I'm, you know, it still shows up, but I'm trying to again, the power of habit. Every time I say stop, I try to say using my voice. And
Right.
again, link something to something that, because all the time I would think stop, you know, instead of reset. And now I'm chaining on to it, right?
Right.
And so it's stop using my voice, or stop taking control of me. And now that's moving further, because that's still kind of neutral / aggressive. And now I'm trying to catch on the front side of that, which is a little bit harder to do, because I've got to catch it before that routine starts, which is please stop. And that's a little bit harder to remember to do, because I have this ingrained routine, but it's still linked. So it's still a little bit easier to do that than it is to just, well, I'm just not going to respond anymore. And I'm just going to be positive. I'm going to change how I think about myself and change. And that also makes me think about what thoughts are the thoughts that I want to keep having, that I want to say are me, right? Like these are the things that define me. And then when I do catch myself in, and there, because there's a lot of brochure mans, right? They're not always the same one.
Right.
And so it's what part of those, you know, can I recruit a whole bunch of them? Can I make me a whole bunch of different positive versions of me?
Right.
And can I use that to affect change for myself and others? Because if I'm not stressed and depressed and negative, then I won't be aloof and unwilling to engage in activities with other people. Maybe I'll start getting out more, you know, maybe I can use that to roll into having higher self-confidence, because now instead of me struggling with negative versions of myself in my head, we're just all the same and we are all me. And now I can go and approach the other pieces that have been lurking in the darkness. Now I can, because now it's not me approaching the darkness with no backup. Now I've got all these other they've turned from brochure men to hype men, and now they're all on my side. Now we can all take something together, and it is still all me, but it's a more complete me. And I feel like I have been fractured for a long time. I have been unwilling to take responsibility and accountability for my own thoughts and actions. I've always wanted to say, oh, it's the weather. Oh, it's a bad day at work. Oh, it's not I'm not in control. It's this outside factor that's made me mad, you know? And now I'm starting to say, no, I am in control. But I'm gonna own it, and I'm gonna improve it, and I'm gonna find a way to appreciate it and appreciate the challenges, appreciate and respect myself in a way that I've never tried to do before. And it's suddenly branched out into so many things.
Yeah, well, it's the difference between trying to tame the world to conform to you, and instead understanding that it's actually there is no spoon, right? Like, you're the one that has to change. You're the one that has to meld and be like water and develop, because you don't have the power. You're just frankly not powerful. You can't control the weather.
Right.
If that's what you said, well, you're fucked, because you can't change it. So you're going to have to figure out something, and if you don't, then you're going to be that thing's subject.
You're just always going to be mad about the fact that you can't control the weather.
Right.
Until you accept it.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
But you feel mad all the time, right? Did you ever watch I probably asked you this before, but did you ever watch the show Herman's Head from the early 90s?
A little bit, like a tiny bit.
I don't remember it that vividly.
I don't remember
either.
much, but
I just remember it was in his head, and there was like 4 roommates that lived in his head, and there was like the fat slobby guy, and like the fashion friendly girl or whatever, and I don't know. Probably all gender stereotypes that are bad now, but
it was the 90s that was rife with them. It was boomers trying to appeal to Gen Xers. So
right. I actually just read today that the Gen X is known as the Karen generation by Gen Z.
Yeah, yep.
That's pretty good.
Okay, Karen.
Born in the 70s, you know. I was always disappointed by being, because I'm in, you're the same boat. 80, you're 84, right? Yeah, I'm 83, but we're literally like a year or two removed from the cutoff between X and millennial, and I was always disappointed that I had to be in the millennial group. But now that I know that the Gen X's are the Karens,
right? Totally millennial it is. I also think that there's a huge difference, and I think we've had this conversation. I had a conversation with another one of my friends about this a lot, which is that there's a huge difference between millennials raised by boomers and millennials raised by Gen Xers.
That's true.
Because you can be a kind of on the cusp of millennial and somebody that's on the opposite cusp of Gen X, or you can be on, somebody who's maybe having a kid at 18 or 20 versus like I was born when my dad was 35.
Yeah, similar.
Right. So he was kind of in the middle of the boomer generation. I'm outside of that. And there's just, so I think that there are other millennials that I look at the way boomers look at millennials. And there's, that I'm like, oh, gee, the participation trophy or whatever. No, not really, but something like that, And like, I don't want to be a millennial because I'm not that guy.
Right.
But then there's that difference. And I think that I think it's just such an interesting blend. And I bet that applies to like each generation group, like which generation were you raised by? Because it's not like every millennial is raised by a Gen Xer who is raised by a boomer. There's, maybe you're a boomer with Depression era parents, or maybe you're, however that works out, those ideals get passed down in different ways. And I think that lineage chain, once I kind of thought about that, it changed my idea about how I see generation gaps. Because I always thought, well, like, I am a millennial, but I'm not. But I am, but I'm not. Maybe I'm just one of those 80s kids. Well, that's a millennial. Like, and so, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, actually, so something and it's kind of related, but it's also just a complete departure from the conversation we were having. But you were talking about, like, to some extent being just like honest with yourself, right? And being accountable to yourself or whatever. And I was listening to Joe Rogan recently had Malcolm Gladwell, which is probably my favorite.
I'm still queued that one up, but I've got a lot to work through. Since I've added the Walkshow to my podcast listing every week, I've had to cut something. So Joe Rogan's out.
You hear that, Joe Rogan? You're gone. He listens, I think. So
that was for sure. It's one of our many California listeners.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I do have some very committed California listeners. So shout out to them and thank you.
Awesome.
But anyway, so they were having a conversation, and it's funny because like I normally, like, you've talked about this with Joe Rogan before, where like sometimes he's a little meatheady for you,
right?
And I've been like, I don't really get that, but I think it's just because I never cared that much about the guest, right?
Right.
That when he's talking to someone that you really, really deeply respect.
Right.
And not that I've never respected any of his other guests or something, I don't mean that, but just like Malcolm Gladwell, I hold in this really high esteem. Mm-hmm. And so they're having some conversation, and then Joe Rogan's like, I think that we're like 30 years away from being able to read each other's minds, because Malcolm Gladwell's most recent book is called Talking to Strangers. And basically the premise of it is, why are we so bad at knowing when a stranger is being completely deceitful with us? And how do we get better at that, and it just turns out, and I haven't finished it entirely yet, but it turns out, at least so far, and from listening to him Gladwell talk about it, there actually just isn't anyone that's any good at it. Like, if you had 100 people walk in a room, a very, like, just better than chance, just better than 50%, would you be able to tell who was lying and who wasn't? Any person.
Right.
And that's just generally true across the board. And so he's talking about how, like, we kind of like our society is based on a default truth. Like,
when you go to the store and it says that the laundry detergent is $5, and then you go up and you pay the $5, like everything is just, you just trust that all of that is accurate and that all of that's handled correctly. And obviously there are mechanisms like a receipt for accountability to see that, oh yeah, I only did pay the $5. But either way, largely all of our interactions are based on trust. You go order a drink at a McDonald's or something, you trust that they didn't spit in it or do something delicious, right? I mean, does it happen? Probably, but generally we assume it doesn't. Well, anyway, so to me, that's a really interesting conversation. And then Joe Rogan's response to that is, well, I think we're like 30 years away from reading minds. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Like, how does that help this conversation at all, Joe Rogan? But anyway, so he then goes on to explain that he thinks that it would be so helpful if we could read each other's intentions and know, because we would be able to root out if people were being deceitful. So then we could just cut that out, just cut out lying from the whole mix. And now everything works great. And Gladwell takes some issue with that sentiment to begin with, and they have a little conversation about it that I won't recreate here. But my thought when he said that was that, like, I don't know if that would actually be helpful. And the reason I say that is because people lie to themselves unintentionally and lie to other people about themselves or about. So, I mean, sure, if I was like, hey, your car's brown and it's obviously red, well, maybe that's just a blatant lie, so we can figure that out. But if I say I can't accomplish things and I can't change my life, that's not true, actually. But I believe it to be true. So in my own space, that is the truth, because that's what I believe.
If you were able to read minds, you would just know that the flat earther really believes in flat earth. You wouldn't know if that was true or not until you had something else that you could compare it to. And
I couldn't say that the flat earther is acting out of malice and trying to trick me or betray me, even though he is lying. Right.
I mean, you could probably speed up the judicial system some for people that but then you get Minority Report scenario, and that's dangerous too. And I think that it would be interesting, just to kind of carry on that tangent, because it's something that I've always thought of, is that, like, if some miraculous technology came out where you could, like, essentially read minds, right? You could see everything, and it was all like, let's say your entire life is posted, not just the things you willingly post. Literally everything is recorded. Like, there's tiny black hole cameras that you can't see. They're invisible. They record absolutely everything on the entire planet all at once, all the time, right? So the entire planet's under surveillance, and anybody can access any amount of data on any person ever, right? There will be a short but violent window where a lot of things, like, that you never wanted to know about people, all of the skeletons in the closet, all of the terrible things, everybody will try to hold against each other, right? But that window,
that's already happening now, actually.
Right, it is to a lesser extent.
Right. It's not everything, but it's.
But when you get to the point where you realize that everybody has these problems, then you actually make a huge leap towards human acceptance, right?
Right.
Where all of a sudden it doesn't matter how many people Granny screwed in her 20s. It's there. You can know it if you want to. You don't have to. You can move on, but everybody has some dark thing in the closet, right? Like, for a while, everybody would be like, no, those are my secrets. Don't let them out. But once it has to be all or none. It can't.
Once everyone's humiliated, now there's no more humiliation.
Once it has to be everyone. It can't. Nobody can be excluded. It has to be like no opt-in, no opt-out. It's all or nothing. If it's anything less than that, then you have class divides and rah rah rah. Right. But if it is everyone, then we all get over a bunch of stuff real quick. We have to. Otherwise, the society just falls apart and everything burns.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that and this is kind of what Gladwell's point is. So now here I am recreating the conversation. I just don't want to make it seem like I think this is my original thought.
Right. Well, that's fair. Right? I think it's good.
But his whole point is kind of like, well, the problem with that is that it eliminates the luxury that time affords us, or the possibilities that time afford us, because maybe you say something to me and my reaction is negative internally, but I don't share that with you.
Right.
And then later, over time, process it and then come back to you and say something that's an appropriate response because I've processed it more.
Or maybe you realize that you were wrong and you didn't.
That's
and then
what I mean.
or you don't even have to respond at all because you're like, oh, well, I was dumb and judgmental and I shouldn't have been. So now I don't even have to say anything at all.
But if you could read my mind, then in that moment, you're going to be pissed.
Right.
Because I was judgy about it. And now, so it actually kind of almost also might create more conflict or more confusion because people should be allowed time to process things and think about things and consider and learn, right? That's what learning is, you know? Anyway, I just thought that was interesting, kind of an interesting thought because it's like, well, how could we eliminate all lying? And it's like, well, that sounds really great, except again, people lie to themselves in some really fundamental ways.
You would have to find a way to eliminate falseness from the universe.
Right.
Which isn't. You would have to then understand the entire universe, at which point you'd basically be a deity. So.
Yeah, well, and it also, I mean, again, like, if you do an affirmation that is like, I'm proud of myself for being at my target weight, but I'm not at my target weight yet.
Right.
Am I lying? Technically, right? I'm saying something that's not true. But now it's good. Like now I'm using that as a service to myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I certainly don't want to do away with that version of it, you know?
The difference is you can read your own mind.
Yeah. You'd think you can, but Brochure Man has taught me otherwise.
That's fair. That's fair.
Brochure Man has taught me otherwise.
I don't know where he gets his stuff up, but I don't hear it.
I don't know. If I had his skills, I would be a salesman somewhere.
Right.
He's very
talented. A lot of money.
Right, yeah. Don't have those skills, though. Yeah, I was talking to Mike, because I hadn't really talked to my counselor about Brochure Man and all, and I brought that up the other day, and I was like, well, now you probably think I need to, like, lay down on the couch and really dive in now that I've brought up my second personality. And she was like, as long as you don't actually see him and, like, interact with him, and I was like, no, I don't. She's like, okay, we're probably
right.
So... Well, so something else I wanted to touch on, actually relating to therapy and counseling, is I know people who I think would greatly benefit from therapy and counseling. In fact, probably everyone would on some level.
I think I am the everyone camp. If you get a good therapist, I've had a bunch of bad ones, but
that's exactly what I wanted to touch on. Was I know people who have tried it. They've gone more than once to, multiple different therapists over several years and have never found anyone that they thought was really helping them and that they really clicked with. And so they just don't believe that it's a viable thing, right? Because they've just seen where it's not. And you yourself were kind of in that.
Definitely for a long time.
And so that's what I guess that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about or have you talk about a bit, was just kind of like, what has that experience been like now finding a therapist that you do click with?
I mean, you've heard me, I've become a hype man for getting a therapist. I think part of that too is that it is just becoming more socially acceptable now.
Sure.
Where even when I was first looking for it more than 15 years ago, it was not. And that's something that has changed just in the last 5 years or so as it really become more mainstream to be open about. And it's not called a shrink anymore, and it's not looked at or portrayed negatively in a lot of like TV shows or anything. But also it was just like, I think when I probably needed a therapist the most, I didn't know how to find one. I didn't know what to look for. So I just thought that, well, you're like a doctor. And if I need a doctor, I don't really care. They're all pretty much the same, which isn't true. People will shop around for doctors too, and I have in the past. But I didn't think about it that way. I just thought like, you're supposed to be a professional, better human than me, so I'm just, whatever. But I've had bad ones. Both psychologists and psychiatrists, both I've had terrible of. And I think it took me a long time before I was willing to write down what I want. Like, and
Man.
being willing to say, like, my first day in therapy with my new therapist, I had like 3 goals. I had to walk in and swear because I had to be able to be open emotionally when I was angry or sad or happy or ecstatic. So I need to drop an F-bomb.
Yep.
And see that, and I'm going to watch how they react. I got to come in comfortable, non-professional, everyday clothes, probably the worst everyday clothes that I have, because I want to see how they judge me on a bad day, quote unquote.
Sure.
And I don't remember. I had some criteria laid out. The funny thing is all of that was blown out the window, and it was kind of like kismet or synchronistic, where I walked in and she was in her socks and in like pajama pants and a comfortable oversized t-shirt, and had art on all over the walls of all kinds of different stuff, that all art that I appreciated, and then swore at me first. So
Fuck you, buddy.
yeah, she was like, well, ain't that the fucking truth? I've heard that a lot. And I'm like, well, she like disarmed every one of my traps. Like I was like, I'm gonna get this therapist and I'm gonna make sure that I know that they're right for me, and I'm gonna set up this devious puzzle box and I'm gonna make them solve. And there's like boink, and it just opened up, and I was like, oh, you're just the one. Like like
yeah.
Okay, I don't know where to go from here, because I had like an hour worth of material ready to do, and we got through that in the first 5 minutes. like you told me the medical journal studies that I usually use as ammo for my other therapists when they aren't up to snuff on the types of things that I struggle with. And I don't want to come out saying like I know more than you, not because I'm not a doctor, but a lot of doctors will take it that way. And it's not that I know more than they do. It's that I know more about myself than they do. And I've probably hyper-focused.
Especially first meeting.
Right. And I've probably also, just the way I do is I've hyper-study things. I've studied the things that I deal with, or I've been told that I deal with, and the things that connect to them a whole lot more than they probably have, because they probably have broad, generalized studies. And she wasn't even that way with that. She's like, nope, studied more than you, know more recent medical journals than you do. And it's like, well, I got nothing. Okay, so you're the therapist now. Great. All right, where do we go from here? Because I've never been further than this. All in the first session. And like one of the things that she did, she had brought up a topic, and she's like, oh, you sound like you may suffer from this. And I was like, what is that? I don't understand. And she's like, well, here's the deal. I can take 20 minutes to explain it to you, or you seem like a smart enough individual with access to the internet. You can just believe me when I say that I think that you relate to that. You can go research it, and we can come back next week and talk about where you think you're alike and different.
Wow.
And I was like, I really respected it, because I'm like, wait a minute, you're saying that you don't want to waste my time in a job where you are paid by the hour. Like, you were telling me that you would rather me not pay you for that. She's so respecting of my time. She's like, that's not what we're here to do. Just go home and learn. And now I get homework assignments from my therapist. And but that keeps me on. It keeps me engaged in I'm learning about myself. And I did go research, and I said, well, I think these things are me, but these are the things that aren't. So don't stereotype me too far into that, because these things aren't me. And that helps her, because she's like, okay, you're this minus that. And now she can target her work better onto me. And it's just, I've called her like a sniper. Like, I'll talk for 20 minutes about my week and stuff that I don't think is important, just kind of whatever. I'm just, until we land on something. And I'll be in a totally fine, just like you and me talking right now. She's like, cool. So I'm going to say a statement and you tell me how you feel. And she'll say something. And I'll just be like, well, I didn't think there was any emotions attached to that, but obviously I was wrong because you said that and now I'm crying. And it's just like, she's like downtown with a sniper rifle, just throws one little thing and it just
Right.
breaks through all my defenses. And in such a good way and in such a helpful
Right.
way that's like, I did not know that about myself.
Right.
And I've had a lot of therapists that do the okay, great, that'll be $100.
Right.
And it's like, and I've had the ones that are like, no, shut up. Here's 3 prescriptions for horse tranquilizers. I don't need to hear any more. I've literally gotten prescriptions for some of the most powerful like medications known to man within 15 minutes.
Right.
And that's just, and I'm like, I'm not taking any of these. I looked them
Right.
up.
Right.
And I'm supposed to work up this dosage. You're giving me weight. Yeah. So I've had a lot of bad experiences, and I think it was setting the intention. It really was like, this was before I was doing affirmations, but it was setting an intention. This is what I'm going to look for. I also had a positive review from somebody else, which I don't think, again, would have happened if it was secret culture time, that having a therapist was something to be ashamed of.
Right.
I met somebody who I shared my problems with. They shared their problems with me, and they're like, I'm in therapy with this great therapist that has helped. Maybe you'd like them. I'm like, oh no, I've done that. She's like, no, they're different. They're good. This is why. I think they're amazing. And she harped on me for 6 months before I was willing to even try to get in, and then found out that my therapist doesn't take new clients. She waits for it to align. So it wasn't until I started journaling because I wanted to have all of the questions that every other therapist has ever asked me answered before I went there. And instead, she didn't ask any of those questions and said basically, oh, well, you've already journaled about them. So just share the Google Doc with me and I can review it in my spare time and we could just move on. Or you've already probably done the work, so we'll figure out where to go from where you are now instead of where you were 2 months ago when you started journaling.
Right.
And it was like, again, just cut through all my defenses. And it was the only time I've ever, like, it's also something. So one thing I want to share, which I find so interesting, and I had this discussion with her, is that I am willing to be more open and honest with what is essentially a stranger that I am paying money to than I would be with any other stranger in the world. Now, some of that, there's a level of trust and, maybe some HIPAA laws and stuff in there, but
Sure.
but really not. That's all, again, like you said, just kind of made up stuff that we assume is true. And it's one of those things where she sees me as I am today. Unlike, because we've had discussions that I would consider therapeutic. And they've been awesome and good and whatever, but you have still built a version of me up over the like 10 or so years that we've been friends, right?
Sure.
And whether that may be a much better version of me than even I think a lot of times it is, but it's still like, anybody that I talk to is going to have some past history. I can't talk about or I feel like I can't talk about certain things with parents, or maybe I frame them differently because I want to keep up their image of me or whatever. I'm worried about my image, or I think other people have an image, or maybe they do, and that they have a bias of going to school with you your whole life or whatever, or that one time in band camp, or whatever the case is that happened that they have some framework built on. This therapist does not have. So when they tell me, like when she says, like, well, I think you're doing a really good job, I'm proud of you, it hits me in a way that like if you or somebody else were to say it, it's like, yeah, but you've known me forever, so of course you're going to be on my side.
Right.
And I'm here to get problems fixed, and they're telling me that I'm doing a good job. Like, it's just different. And it's also, if you find a therapist and they're unbiased, which is how a therapist should be, the things that they say that are negative about you won't hurt as bad because you're the one that said them. And they're just
Right.
saying it back to you and you suddenly realize it.
Right.
But it's also the positive things that they tell you that you don't believe about yourself. And they're like, yeah, but you just said it. You just did it. You don't realize that that took a lot of effort. Or you don't realize that nobody else sees it that way. Nobody else sees the work that you're doing. I do. And it's
Right.
those things, you see the Facebook memes or whatever all the time of like, mental illness is silent and nobody knows how hard it is to get out of bed every day, which is true. There's truth to those, but they're almost as terrible as the motivational posters that were like persistence and it's a guy biking up a mountain or something, like it.
Memes before memes.
Right.
They were like meme pictures before we could share them on the internet so easily.
But it's just not as human as actually recognizing it in somebody. And I think that having somebody around that can do that, if you have a friend that does that, that's great. And I think that's a good step towards therapy. I still would say that a trained professional is going to have a little bit more insight, if anything else, a good one.
Yeah.
But again, my dad always told the joke of what do you call a doctor that graduated last in his class? Well, doctor. Just because they were the worst doctor in their class, C's get degrees, and there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those in every profession, and there's a lot of people who didn't go to college who are great at their job,
Right.
But there's something to be said for there are good and bad ones, and there are ones that may not fit you. Especially, I mean, we're in the Midwest, so being religion adjacent is even that, which a lot of other places you'd be like, well, agnostic people are everywhere, no big deal. And it's like, no, agnostic people get like hanged around here, like maybe not physically, but definitely there's some shunning going on,
Yeah.
There are groups that I won't bring that up in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so to find a therapist that like it, which we had discussed with her, was like, it's one thing to find somebody that like to be a friend with, right? That likes video games, and then the more things you tack onto that, the less likely you're going to find somebody that fits that thing, right? So like, I want a friend that likes video games, but also not too much, and isn't super obsessed with shooters, and does enjoy, but also reads books and also likes physics, and also like the more of those and alsos, the less likely you're going to find that person, right? And that's the same way with a therapist. Is I want a therapist in the Midwest that isn't hyper religious and doesn't use Jesus as the first thing that I need, who also is open to more outside ideologies, but is also college trained or educated and up on modern medical journals and is okay with swearing and me coming in my PJs and all of these things. It's like that reduces it down to a really low number, but I was still able to find it. And more than I would have asked for.
Right.
And it's like, that didn't happen until, and it really was, even though I'd sent the first email out to her, once I start saying, hey, I'd like to become a patient, how do I do that? I don't even know. It's been so long since I've been down this road that I don't really know anymore. You tell me what's next. Here's what I think I suffer from, But then just because I'd done that, I started journaling, because I was like, oh, well, I want to be able to answer the questions that on the spot, I suck at answering. So I'm going to have some answers written down. And I mean, I didn't hear a response from her for like, I don't know, a month or 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, like, I mean, at least 2 to 4 weeks before I got my first response of like, and that was like, hey, I'll try to get something on the schedule. I don't have anything right now. And so I started thinking, well, that's when I started asking myself, well, what if she doesn't work out? What if I walk in and I hate her?
Right.
I'm still on this path now where I think I'm ready for it, and I think I would try. I want to be able to try again. I don't want to feel like a failure if she's not the one. So that's when I started kind of writing down and getting ideas for the tests that I need to put her through, because I need to take charge of my therapy just as much as I need to take charge of my doctor. If I don't believe that my doctor is giving me good advice or good medication, or is unwilling to do blood work for something or whatever, then I need to look for another doctor, because I need to figure out, get a second opinion. Are they right and I'm just being a hypochondriac about this and I don't need blood work? Or are they wrong because they're not seeing the underlying genetic history of some rare disease or disorder, right? You know, like, and so I just decided, I was like, one's not going to be a failure, but I'm going to get my money's worth and I'm going to get as much out in the first session as I can. So I'm not going to hold back anymore, because I don't care what they think about me. I had to decide, I do not give a fuck what this therapist thinks. I'm going to come in guns blazing, shoot all of the ammo that I have, the biggest guns that I have, the wildest, craziest bullshit that I deal with. I'm going to fire it at them and I'm going to see how they take it. Because I've had some, I mean, I've been to like the free therapy clinic that has some grad student working on their master's program who's doing work for free, right? And I've walked in and think that I may have caused people to reconsider their careers, right? Like, oh, I may not want to be in this field if I got to deal with this crazy guy. Like, you know. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted to be like, I'm going to throw everything at you, see how you handle it. Because if this is a no, I don't want to find out this is a no 6 months down the road, because that's a lot of money to invest. I'm not in network right now. So this is not on my health insurance. And yeah, I was also ready to, like, because I was prepping for war. I was just as ready to, like, all right, if I knock this one dead and they're not for me, I'm ready to go to the next one. I already have all of the tools and ammo and everything ready. I'm going to keep doing this until I find one. And I had decided that. And it's like, once I had decided that, that's when the universe was like, okay, we'll give you the best one then. If you're going to do all this work anyway, we'll just, you know, I don't know if that's how it really happened or I just got incredibly lucky, but whatever.
Well, that's what I was just thinking, is that it could be described as lucky, except that luck is described as when preparation meets opportunity.
Heard last week on the Walkshow.
Yeah, there you go. Also not my original saying.
Right, no, I get it.
But cliche, but yeah, I mean, that's what happened. You prepared, and then you had an opportunity, and it so happened that this was the opportunity.
Right.
But because you had done that preparation, you could take advantage of it. And if it hadn't been, as you just said, you're ready to go to the next opportunity. And so then, if it had been the fifth counselor, then you'd think you got really lucky because, oh my God, I looked forever. I finally found this one. How lucky.
Yeah.
Actually not. Still same thing. Still because you prepared.
And you know, for anybody that is or has been on the therapy journey, again, just like with anything else, one session does not a fix make.
Right.
Like, just like working out, just like any of these other, you got to let it be a habit. And there will be therapy sessions where you go in, and you say some stuff, or you talk too long, or there's nothing meaningful to be had there. Or, in my case, I go in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of things that are wrong, to the point where my therapist said, okay, pick one. Like, we can't fix everything all at once, and I can't tell you what you want to fix about yourself. So your homework this week is pick one. Pick one to fix, one thing to work on that we can go deep on. She's like, I have enough of the surface level of all the different problems that I can help suggest some things, but they're the same suggestions that you've given. So now if you're ready to go to the next step, we have to target and pick just one thing, and let's jump in deep. Let's get ready to do like a 4-hour session. She does EMDR therapy. She's like, well, let's get ready to do a deep session where you go twice a month instead of every week, and one is for 3 hours and one is for 1 hour. It's still 4 hours in the month, so you know I can budget for it. My budget doesn't change, and maybe she's willing to, you know, email me a writing prompt if I need one or whatever. Like, she's willing to work with me in the way that I need to be worked with, and that's the way your therapist. And sometimes you'll know what that is, and sometimes you won't. You may not know how a therapist needs to treat you. Some of it is going to be instinct, but some of it is going to be, it's going to take more than one session. And sometimes you'll have a bad session. And other times you'll have a session where the sniper comes out and you're just walking down the street and boom, your shields are down, your emotions are exposed, and you learn something deep about yourself that you never knew.
Yeah, well, and the thing that I'm hearing in this conversation so much is just I just keep thinking about nuance, like I said earlier, because on one hand we're saying, hey, your therapist might not be right for you, so find another one, right? Like you might try a therapist and they don't work, and that's fine. Simultaneously, you might go to a therapist, and just because you don't get something out of a session doesn't mean that that's the wrong person, right? So my point in saying that isn't that it's confusing or that it's bad advice or something. It's that there's nuance. Like it's not easy. Things are not just right, left.
Right.
That's just not.
You basically have to walk out. Like, I mean, I walked in prepared for war, but
yeah,
I was prepared to walk out knowing that, like, basically you have to ask yourself, were they so bad that if this was because of them having the worst day of their life, are they still too bad for me to want to go back?
Yeah.
Because you never know what the worst day of somebody's life is, right?
Right.
So being able to say, like, well, that wasn't great, but what if this was their worst day and they were just not on their game? Am I willing to, if that were the case, would I forgive them and try again? And if the answer is no, they're still, like, they wouldn't accept anything about me and they're a terrible person and I don't think that's right for me, then yeah, look for the next one. But if you can give that forgiveness, then try again. But the constraints get a little bit tighter each time, right? Like every day can't be your therapist's worst day because that's why you're going there.
Well, like I know a person that went to a therapist for, I don't know, a few months.
Yeah.
And the therapist was just really, really passive with them. So the therapist would like make some very loose suggestions about things that the patient could do to, modify their behavior or whatever. But it was all very kind of passive, and it wasn't what this particular therapist wasn't doing was they weren't trying to have this patient talk things out and then maybe help them see a different angle of it, or like, well, you thought about it this way. And so the patient was like, well, I just don't think I'm getting anything out of this. And it's like, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be times where you might see a therapist for a few times and maybe you aren't getting anything out of it. Try someone else. And that's the reason that I wanted to bring this up and wanted you to talk about that, is because, again, nuance. Like, are all therapists the same? No, they're not all bad. It's made up of individuals.
There can also be good therapists that don't specialize in what your particular case is. And they could be, I actually had one of my, prior to this, best therapists that I'd ever been to told me, she's like, I went to her for like 3 sessions. And on the 3rd session, she was like, well, I'm going to admit something. She's like, I mean, I think I can help you. I don't think I'm as prepared to help you as what you need. She's like, because I'm a child psychologist. She's like, I specialize in, especially in early developmental childhood psychology. And I mean, this was when I was like 26. And I was like, that's really fair. I appreciate you saying that. Like, and but it's also was kind of depressing because it was like, this is the best one yet. And she's actually saying that I'm probably not a good fit for her. And it's like being turned down for a job. Like, you got like 3 interviews in, you think you're guaranteed in, and now it's we went with somebody else. It's like, so that can happen too. And you may not know, like, I didn't know what all I struggled with. In fact, until late last year, early this year, I didn't even know the particular, like, where on the particular spectrum of issues I was falling. I was just told big broad terms by everybody else that I was like, these don't seem to fit. And I tried to research them and tried and never hit on anything. until I remembered something that one of my first therapists said, kind of condescendingly, as if like, yes, I know what you're talking about. But it was so quick that I had forgotten about it until I looked it up, and I was actually like, that's not it. But the next Wikipedia article that's related is it. And so then I was able to finally like, this is the thing. Oh my God, I found it. Then you can find it. So you may have to see a couple therapists to figure out what wheelhouse of therapists you need to see. Like,
Right.
you need somebody who specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder, or therapy for people that have had sexual assault incidents or whatever, or sexual behavior therapy. Maybe you believe yourself a deviant. Like, there is a therapist that works on each of those things. And if you don't know what it is, maybe start with like a free clinic, or what is available in reduced pay, or however, the sliding scales. There's a lot of places that'll do. Does your work offer a few sessions of free therapy? Sometimes health insurance plans do, and a lot of them don't talk about it. Pull up your benefits plan, dig into it, call your representative, find out, ask why they don't. I'll make them squirm a little. Ask your boss why they don't. Be it rebel against society, bring down the man, burn it all. But yeah, it may take you going to a few therapists that say, oh, I think I know what you have. This is it. I don't specialize in that. Ask for a referral. Hey, I actually like the way your style. I know that I may not be a fit for you. Do you know somebody that I could work with?
Right.
Find books on the subject. There's a lot of remote therapy now. There's a lot of people that offer sessions via Skype, like video sharing platforms, whatever, whether you have an Android or an Apple or your FaceTime or whatever. There's a lot of ways to get it. And maybe you get somebody that offers you writing prompts. Maybe you can only spend a few bucks a month to get a face-to-face thing that maybe is 15 minutes. Ask them like, hey, what are things that I should research? What are books that I should read? What are things I should write about? Again, it all comes back to, part of it is taking that control and saying, I'm responsible for it. I'm ready for it. And being willing to see that, say and see I'm not perfect. And then being proud to say that you're ready to work on it. It sucks when I've been in the deepest, darkest of places. And it's really hard at that point to say, I'm proud that I want to go see a therapist.
Yep.
But you should be proud.
Yep.
Because that means that you're ready, or at least you recognize that you want to fix what is wrong. And I think that's so important, and that's not something to be further depressed about. That's not something to keep going through the vicious cycle of self-hatred. It is totally 100%. In fact, if you don't think you need a therapist, go see a therapist. Just to see.
Yeah.
Just to see.
Right.
Because you're probably in a much better situation. Like, cool. See if you can get even better. Or see if you do actually have some things. There's a lot of people, like the people who say, okay, I think I need to see a therapist, they're the bravest ones. The people who say, no, I'm perfect as I am, they're the ones that need it more than you.
Right.
They're the ones. Everybody can improve. Nobody's perfect. If you think you're perfect, you really need a therapist because you're a narcissist. Like,
right. Yeah. Well, so my counselor, what she had given me is this book called Feeling Good that I'll probably talk about for a whole episode at some point once I've completed it. It's a dense read, so I don't know how quick that will be, but it's awesome. It's this book written in like 1982, I think, by Dr. Burns. And it's all about cognitive behavioral therapy to treat depression and anxiety. And I'm only on like chapter 6, I think. And I already fully believe that everyone should read that book. Whether or not you think you suffer from depression and anxiety in a chronic way, I don't think anyone is free from at least the occasional depressive thought or feeling of hopelessness or whatever the case may be.
If we were never afraid of lions and tigers, we would have all been eaten. So anxiety is just something that exists.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. The that book has been so fascinating for me already, partly because it's helped me understand other people in my life that suffer really badly from those things, and kind of to more clearly understand what it is that they're going through and what it is, how they're seeing the world. But the thing that so far the book has suggested, which is something you said very early in this conversation, is that whenever you have these thoughts, it's so important to write them down.
Yeah.
Like you said with the posture thing, where you wrote it down, and now you can read it, and now it's a question, and now you can have a different conversation. It seems silly and trivial because you're just writing something down on a Post-it note. So it's like, well, how much power could that really have? The answer is a fuck ton.
Yeah, a crazy amount. I still have one of the 2 Post-it notes. I don't have to have the just one pull-up Post-it note anymore because I'm out of that.
Right.
But the posture Post-it note stays there because I still sometimes suck at that, like right now.
Right.
Or whatever.
But it's like, so there's so much value in writing stuff down.
Oh, yeah.
And I think people, it's a shame. And I was this way until somewhat recently, honestly, but there's so much skepticism around self-improvement stuff because there are a lot of snake oil vendors out there, and there's a lot of, and the other thing that's true that's not even snake oil is that a lot of this stuff is cliche. Like, you could summarize a lot of what we talk about with like, oh, that's the power of positive thinking. It's like, well, it kind of is, or like,
that's being self-motivated.
Yeah, well, that's just the Nike slogan of just do it. Like, we've all heard that for our whole lives, like.
You also don't realize how much truth it is. But also there's some things where it is hyper aggrandized, right? Like, just do it is like a guy dunking. Like, it's Jordan dunking, right?
Yeah.
If you can't do one pull-up, you probably don't feel like you can dunk a basketball. You probably don't feel like you can clean your bedroom. Like, all right, well, don't clean your whole bedroom. Pick up one piece of trash today.
Yep.
Like, what is the smallest thing that you can do in the darkest moment? Throw away the snotty tissue.
Which again, that's the journey of 1,000 steps begins with one.
Eating an elephant one bite at a time. Right. Yeah.
So it's like there are all these cliches that everyone already knows and that people dismiss very casually. But again, I'm
think
here
it's
to tell you,
some of it is framed too metaphorically. I think some of it needs to be framed more realistically. Like, even if the only thing that you can do today is throw away the tissue that you've been crying in for 6 hours, that is an accomplishment.
Yep.
Like, talk to the people that are in that spot. Very few people are trying to eat an entire elephant. Very few people are trying to walk across the country, so they don't relate to it. They don't engage with the metaphor. And like your friend Chris that's been on with poetry, it's you have to engage emotionally with your target audience, and a journey of 1,000 steps does not engage emotionally with me. Maybe a video game of 1,000 hours begins with a single start click. Like, maybe that's a little bit closer to what I need.
That's good. Yeah. Right.
But I think that it's good that we're getting to be more comfortable with it, with emotion, with talking about our problems. Like, I'm interested to see what happens if I were to set up a little stand downtown or something that's like, tell me your worst problem, and I'll tell you mine, or whatever, like you said, engaging with strangers is difficult, but at the same time, I just paid a stranger to help me with my problems, Now, granted, it's because I believe in the truth that they have some knowledge or foresight.
Right.
But yeah, I think that aligning these metaphors to something that people can grasp, and like, be proud of going to therapy. Tell your friends, post about it on, like, I in fact started being more willing to talk about my stuff because of another friend of mine, who we even started as not very good friends. We had a mutual friend, but she started going through some stuff, and she had gone to a therapist for years, but started talking about it more openly, then started doing live videos about it. And then started talking about the problems they go through, their depression, their anxiety, their troubles, their bad days. They wouldn't stream on their good days. They streamed their worst days and showed the worst bits of it. And it was like, it helped normalize it for me.
Right.
And it's like, it's okay. In fact, I was like, wow, you are so brave for doing this. And then I thought that because I wasn't brave enough to go there, and much less talk about it.
Right.
And, there's certain things that I won't say because the public at large is not ready for some of those conversations, right? Like,
Right.
there are things that can still get us in trouble. But whether that be because I think it will or it actually could, I don't know. But there's certain things that I'm going to keep out for now until more of that is normalized. But I
Right.
hope to help normalize it. I hope to help bring that closer by being open about it, and
Right.
being open about my successes and my failures, and the times where I did take the doctor's word for it and took horse tranquilizing pills and suffered the worst events of my life, where I slept for 36 hours, and
Right.
it wasn't because I wanted to. It was the medication. I had to combat crawl out of my bed because my legs didn't work because my doctor gave me this pill. Like,
Right.
okay, lesson learned, not doing that anymore. And being
Right.
strong enough to say, that's not for me. That's not the route that I want to go.
Right.
And all of that was hard. All of it was difficult. It was scary to be there in the moment. It was also scary to say, you're wrong, doctor, after I took this pill for the third day in a row. Like, oh, it'll get better.
Right.
It just has to get into your system. Like, no, this is not something I want in my system, and that's not to say that medication is bad. I've also been on a number of medications that have worked. And I fully support people that use them to take a step forward or to take their next step. All I say is, be mindful of what you're taking and how long you're taking it. That there are some doctors that will give you a medication that'll make you feel great, that's not actually going to fix your problems. So combine medication with therapy. Use it as something to get through what you need to get through,
Right.
and try to move through it and move on.
Use it as like the lever or the pulley or
Right.
whatever that will help get a little momentum, but it's not the end game. And clearly I'm not a doctor, not a medical professional.
Oh yeah,
not
no,
qualified
I cannot speak
statement.
for.
I'm not qualified to make the statement I'm about to make, but for the vast majority of people, so not all people, but for the vast majority of people, especially in the context of depression and anxiety, I have yet to be convinced that drugs are the answer.
Right.
And again, not that they can't be a part of the answer, not that they can't help, but it is not the final answer. And I've seen too much personal anecdotal stuff, and I get that it's anecdotal, it's my own experience, but I've just seen it, and I fundamentally believe that behavior and patterns is where it's at. And like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I think it's the cheat code. It's the game genie to the whole thing, is habits. And one other final thing I'd like to add, I guess, to that is, in that Feeling Good book today, I was reading it, and again, this is not unique to this book, but it was talking about procrastination and the confusion that procrastinators, which I myself have, is that they think that they're supposed to feel inspired and then take the action. And it's actually the opposite. It's actually, you take the action, that then leads to motivation, which then leads to doing the action again, which then recycles into motivation, which then recycles into action. And that's actually the loop. But just like I was talking about, where I was trying to find this epiphany for my whole life and couldn't, it's because I was doing exactly that. I was trying to find an intellectual understanding that would lead me to feeling differently and acting differently. And that's actually backwards. It's actually, you act differently, then you will feel differently, then you understand it differently.
Well, and I think what a lot of people say, myself as an artist and a procrastinator, and something that I still struggle with, is that I'll say I'm waiting to be inspired, or I'm just waiting for my muse, or I'm got a little bit of a artist block or whatever. It's not that I need inspiration. It's that I lack courage.
Right.
That I am actually afraid to take the first step, because I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen if I do get inspired, or if I do decide to start, like, my whole life could change if I take this step. What if I do become an amazing artist? Then how do I have to deal with it? Like, it's not that I'm waiting to be inspired. It's that I'm afraid of taking that first step. And that's the first thing you got to get over, is getting over that fear. And I think that the best way to do that is to take a smaller step, to break it down. And like I said, break it down into the most embarrassingly uncomfortable tiny step. Don't break it down into like one day. I think a lot of that was from the Own Your Day, Own Your Life, by
Aubrey, whatever Joe wrote.
Yep. And it broke it down into 1 hour chunks, and even broke those down into things to do in that 1 hour. And it gave me some of that framework that I needed of like, I can break it down to a sticky note. I can break it down to one word. I can break,
Right.
and you can take that a step further and take some like, oh God, what's his name? I can't remember his name now, but you can basically make a glyph out of it, right? Like if you're embarrassed by the sticky note that says brush.
Oh, is it like Grant Morrison or whatever?
No, Alex Grant? Maybe it is Grant Morrison. Anyway, I think you're right.
The guy he's like a graphic novel writer guy.
Yeah.
And he talks about symbols
Yes.
I don't know if it's Grant Morrison. I think it is.
I think you're on the right track. But yeah, so say you're embarrassed by like, you don't brush your teeth every day. You brush them twice a week, right? And you want to get better at that. Well, you don't want at work that if you want to brush your teeth on lunch or something, and you don't want people seeing a sticky note that says brush your teeth more often, or maybe you don't even want to see it because you feel so embarrassed by it. Right. Then take all of the letters in that sentence, or just in the word teeth, and merge them together. Maybe like take out all the duplicates, whatever, turn it into a doodle. It doesn't even have to be that. Doodle something.
Right, it could be a circle with a dot in it. You know
what that means. There's a lot of times that I'll use Sharpie on my hand, and I'll put like X, and people are like, "Oh, you're a minor or something?" I'm like, "No, that's to remind myself to get groceries after work." Like, because I know what it means. Paint a fingernail. Like there was somebody that painted one fingernail blue to remind themselves not to chew their nails because they'd see it anytime like it was in the corner of their vision. And like it doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna like somebody might ask you, why is your fingernail blue, and you could just tell them, I like blue. I don't know. It's the thing I'm doing. It's the new me. They don't have to know. Fuck them. And like, what's the sticky note with the doodle? I just like it. You know, I just have to.
And the real truth is that pretty much no one's gonna ask.
Yeah, nobody's gonna care to begin with because they've got their own life to worry about.
Yeah, that's the thing that I always I bring up constantly when it comes to like insecure / paranoid people, is that it's like you're paranoid that all these people are out to get you, and the real truth is actually much colder than that, and that is that no one fucking cares. Right. Like that's actually way more brutal than
it's true. They all care so much about you that they want to sabotage you.
Yeah, they all have to make
because you're such a threat to their lives.
Right. No, in fact, they don't care. They don't care. Like outside of the few people that are in your life that you know, they don't care. And that's not meant to be mean. No. It's actually liberating because they don't care.
Because now you can have a sticky note, a drawing of a stick figure to remind you to wear clean socks today. Or, you know, and once you do it that second or third time, then you're able to do the one thing, brushing your teeth once a day or once every other day. It makes it easier to do it again and again and again. Now you've got a habit, and now we're right back there. And then that same symbol can become something that means something more to you than just brushing your teeth. Maybe it does mean a whole self-care routine. And maybe you eventually get it tattooed to yourself because it becomes an important part of your life. Like, and those are all amazing things. And do them. Do the stupid, weird stuff that doesn't matter to anybody else, and do it for yourself. Like, because you're the only person that gets to enjoy your life.
Yeah. In the end, you know, it's the cliche of, you know, everyone dies alone kind of thing, and it's like everyone actually lives alone too. And I actually personally believe that relationships are the most important part of life. Like for me, that's the most rewarding and fulfilling thing in my life is relationships I have with people. So it's not to say that relationships don't matter, but at the end of the day, it's me. And I'm the one experiencing this.
It's okay to be, for somebody that like myself, and I think you suffer from too, is giving a lot of yourself out to other people to help other people. Like, it's okay to be a little bit selfish. Like, in fact, selfishness is kind of required. You have to be selfish to take care of yourself.
It's also just inherent. So to try and get away from being selfish is as a fool's errand, because it's literally just the way that we operate. Like, you eat because you're hungry.
And you're taking, exactly.
Literally everything that you do is because you want to do it. Even if that's some grand gesture of generosity, you're still doing it. Feel good to do it, like,
or because you believe you're going to make a difference, and maybe you do. but that's still because you think you're going to do it. And as long as you aren't hurting anybody through your selfishness, then I think it's good selfishness. I think it's a very cliched, very connotative word that has very good and important things underneath it that we take the wrong way. And I was like, well, I don't want to be selfish by taking care of myself. And my therapist is like, do you realize how sad and dumb you sound right now? Like, stop it. And just instead don't do that. Like,
can I start saying it to you in our conversation?
No, you're not allowed. She didn't say it quite like that either. But it's how I took it, because I'm hard on myself. So she actually probably said something like, I think you're an amazing person and taking care of yourself is a good thing and you're doing the right thing. And I probably cried afterwards. And I'm not used to hearing that, you know.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come and do this episode here with me. Obviously, we're also available on a regular basis on Pick Up Your
something a little bit more lighthearted on how StarCraft can help you be a life coach. Then,
just to be clear though, fuckfaces, we actually talk about some of this shit on that too, because we talk about how the game helped to kind of initiate this whole process. We avoided that topic here for your benefit. If you want to know how StarCraft can change your life, check out Pick Up Your Sticks. But in all honesty, again, you know, thank you very much, Brett. I really appreciate your the generosity of your time, and you, like I said, man, being there and really being an inspiration for me through this whole process. I fundamentally am certain that I would not have made it as far as I have if it weren't for our relationship.
Well,
so thank you very much.
I don't think I could have been an inspiration to you without your podcast to inspire me to do a lot of this stuff. Like I said, the working out thing happened because of a conversation you and Misha had about boxing while I was walking the dog. So, I mean, if it weren't for the podcast, I wouldn't have been able to motivate you. So thank you.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much, Brett Lindley, for joining the show. I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. I had a great time talking about this stuff with you. Also, thanks again to Misha Zarins for providing the music. If you guys ever want to listen to more of Misha's music, which you should, it is there is a link in our show notes that'll take you right to a place where you can access the songs that he's put out there. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking the show out. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Stay up.